Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic, and if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic.
Get away from my store, you brat. Geez, I just wanted to buy a shirt. The blonde child walked away in a huff and moved away from the store. As he did so, several more people glared at him and gave him unfriendly looks, and all he could do was look back and laugh as he moved away to find something else to do. However, it was not long before he was near the outside of the village gate that he found that he was being followed by a number of armed villagers. Not again. The blond boy turned his heels and took off to avoid the following individuals armed with an array of tools, who were intent on inflicting bodily harm on him. He, however, was running so fast that he was not watching where he was going, and therefore he ran into another person. Oof. Naruto fell to the ground and he looked up and saw someone standing before him and was wearing robes of a very different nature. The man had deep golden eyes and golden hair with silver streaks in them. The man smiled at Naruto and spoke in a regal tone. You should watch where you are going, young man. Sorry. Ah, they're here. There he is. Demon brat. The tall man dressed in regal robes looked at the band of armed villagers with a calm eye as he stood behind the young blonde child, and suddenly in the eyes of the villagers and the young boy, a massive halo of fire surrounded the man quickly, and then they watched as the flame grew and took a living form, almost like a serpent made of pure flames. The serpent rose and roared out at the villagers as the man spoke in a serious and regal tone of authority. If you think I will let this boy come to harm, you are sadly mistaken. Leave now, or else. How? What kind of jutsu is that? He created a serpent out of flame without moving his hands. He must be a demon. The man spoke again with a calmer and more patient tone. Demon? No, I am something more than a demon. In me flows power you are not even able to understand yet in your lifetimes. I do not plan to fight you, as you are not my sworn enemies, nor are you and your weapons are of any threat to me even in this form. But I have stated that you will not harm this boy while I am around. Now be gone. The villagers began to back away and soon took off to a run, and blonde boy looked at his savior with shocked and amazed eyes. The man's face softened considerably and the serpent of flame faded from sight, and the young boy looked at the man and finally spoke in a very odd tone. Who are you? Me. I am Valen. And you are? My name is Naruto, Naruto Uzumaki. How did you do that? You didn't use any hand seals at all. Valen looked at the young man with a curious expression and spoke in a very cultured fashion. What do you mean by hand seals, young man? A ninja is supposed to use hand seals to make a jutsu work. That's what I learned back in the academy. Is that some kind of jutsu that does not use hand seals? Ah, hand seals? You mean mystical gestures in my tongue? No, young man, what you have witnessed is a technique that uses no hand seals, if you will. Cool. Can you teach me that technique? Valen grinned and replied. I wish I could, young Naruto. But I am afraid that now is not the best of times for such an action. Ah, please. Naruto did his most cute gesture of pleading, earning a chuckle from the man in robes. However, that changed when the man became serious and stepped in front of the boy as a band of strange individuals dressed in black, wearing armor and carrying swords came on the scene. The strangely garbed people surrounded Naruto and Valen as the villagers came back. No doubt they had called these people to try and deal with Valen. Another band of the strangely garbed men came, and with them was a man who was dressed in regal robes and wore a strange hat on his head with an odd symbol. As the new person of authority appeared, several of the Anbu stood to bar the way of the villagers. Naruto quickly recognized the man before him in the regal robes. Old man. The old man was Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage of the village of Konoha and the current leader after the death of the previous leader of the village. He had been the one who cared and protected Naruto when he was young, and it was he who placed down the law concerning an ancient truth that had long been hidden from the young man in question. Hiruzen then spoke to the stranger. Who are you? I am Valen. And from what I can see and sense, you are the leader of this village, am I correct? Yes, My name is Hiruzen Sarutobi, and I am the Hokage of Konoha. Why are you here? I came here merely to rest and move on in my journey when I saw this boy being chased by a band of the villagers and they were armed with some weapons. I naturally stepped in as I will not allow any harm to come to a child for whatever reason. I see, it seems that I am in your debt. So it seems. The Hokage looked at Naruto, who was looking at both him and Valen, and he looked back at the stranger. There was something odd about this person before him. There was power, great power that dwarfed his in a good number of ways, and it seemed that the power itself was controlled in a fashion that was unnerving. The elderly Hokage knew that despite his seeming calm, this stranger possessed enough power to rival most if not all ninja at the moment. He had to tread carefully here and he knew it. I wish to talk to you. Come with me to the tower. Valen considered it and nodded. Very well. I accept your invitation. But what of the boy Naruto? Naruto then spoke out as he saw that this was a chance to finally be in the tower without having to deal with the villagers giving him trouble at the moment. I'll go with Valen, old man. Later. These are very interesting food items. I have never tasted these before. Sarutobi, what are they called? The Hokage looked at Valen as the stranger was currently eating some fish balls at the moment. Valen was amazingly cooperative with him and the Anbu that escorted him. When they had entered the village, the villagers who tried to harm Naruto stayed away from the tall stranger, who apparently was more concerned with the boy's safety than his own, as he gave them a calm but very serious glare that radiated power and strength that made Sarutobi know that this stranger was more than capable in the art of war. Fish balls, they are fish meat that have been specially made into balls. I see, now I must know some things about this young man that I have rescued. From what I have seen, a number of the village's residents have ill intentions towards Naruto. Why is that the case? That is a very long story. And I have made a law that forbids any mention of it. Does it have anything to do with the evil power I sensed in the boy? The Hokage looked at the stranger, who was calmly eating the fish balls but had a very serious stare, and the Hokage could tell that the man was gently asking for answers to his questions. Normally he would never speak of the past, but this man wielded a power that he had never seen before, and that was saying something for the former genius shinobi known as the Professor. It was years ago. The demon beast known as the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. It was a powerful creature. With a single blow of its tail, forests were destroyed, tsunamis would occur and mountains crushed. Many ninja of this village gave their lives to stop its rampage, and the fourth Hokage, who was my replacement after I retired years ago, gave his life to seal the demon away in a boy. That boy being Naruto, I take it. That is correct. The Yondaime hoped that Naruto would be seen as a hero before he died, the one who would bind the Kyuubi and keep the demon away from all life. But the villagers see him as a demon child. When I took up the office of Hokage once more, I made an edict to prevent anyone from ever speaking of it to others, even their children. But I fear that it will not be enough, as they look at Naruto with angry, hateful, and spiteful eyes. Their children will look at him the same way. But what choice did I have? It was either that or they would harm him. It doesn't seem to work as well as you might think, however. Sarutobi nodded at that. The incident that Valen told him was but one of few open attacks on the boy by people too thick-headed with their desire to harm the child. But thankfully the Anbu he had assigned to keep watch over Naruto have done their best to keep him from harm. This day's incident was due to bad luck, and no amount of planning could change that. I know, that is why I worry at times. Iruka does his best to help Naruto live a normal life. But I feel that it will be an uphill battle for Naruto to be accepted as one of the village's people and as a ninja. Who? Iruka Yumino. He is one of the Chunin instructors in our academy, and he is the one who acts as Naruto's father figure. Naruto might prank Iruka at times like everyone else, but he is the one who helps Naruto whenever they are not in the academy grounds. He sounds like a good man. Sarutobi nodded at that. He is. Iruka's parents were killed by the Kyuubi when it attacked, but he treats Naruto like a little brother and Naruto sees him as a father figure. Despite their bickering, the two of them love ramen just as much. Because he was an orphan like Naruto, Iruka used to have the same lonely life, and because he knows and understands Naruto's life, he cares for him a great deal, despite the past. That is something I know greatly to be true. Valen nodded, and as soon as he was finished eating his food, he spoke to Sarutobi. You wished to know who I am, Sarutobi. I believe that was a question in your mind when you and I met, and I have no doubt that the villagers have told you of my powers. I can assure you that I am no demon, though I am not entirely human either. Sarutobi looked at Valen and was patiently waiting for answers, and he knew that several hidden Anbu were ready to respond should something go wrong here, though he doubted that they would be a match to Valen, as he could tell that whatever Valen truly was, his powers would be far beyond them and even his. I can show you just who I am, however this will be for your eyes alone, this will not hurt, but brace yourself nevertheless. Valen then placed his hand on Sarutobi's forehead, and the old man gave a slight groan and the Anbu appeared to fight, but only a moment later, Valen moved his hand away and Sarutobi spoke to the Anbu. I am all right. The Hokage looked at Valen and spoke in a very reverent tone. I understand what you are now, but I must ask what you plan to do now. Valen smiled and replied, I have a boy to watch over for a while. In the coming days, Valen was given permission by the Hokage to hang out with Naruto, and Valen did so with a smile. Naruto himself was happy to have a friend, and Valen was certainly a very cool guy as well as Iruka. The Chunin instructor and Naruto's father figure had to admit that while Valen was imposing, he was well cultured and mannered as well, and seemed to be very comfortable in Naruto's presence, despite the blonde's antics. He was told by the Hokage that Valen was all right, but he had heard the rumors how he could control fire and wield strange powers from the other villagers, but Iruka believed the Hokage more than idle gossip, and if the Hokage said that Valen was all right with him, then the Chunin was all right with Valen. Valen, however, was far from idle, as he planned on how to help Naruto, and through unknown means had begun to make needed changes to help Naruto out, and with the Hokage's help, things were going along well enough. Valen had not revealed anything to Naruto, feeling that now was not yet the time for the young man to know everything. He would learn on his own time, and he would be the one to make the decisions for his own future. That was what being human was all about, free will. It made him both smile and mourn when those thoughts came to mind. Humanity always made mistakes. It was natural, and just as there were great heroes and noble people in their kind, there were infamous villains and corrupt people in them as well. The future of humanity always was unique, they could go one way or the other. Some were great champions of peace, justice, compassion, some could be harbingers of war, suffering, corruption, while others were stuck in between or chose to be there themselves. His race was old, older than any living being on this world he was merely visiting, long before man ever walked the world. His race and many others lived before them, and when humans came, his race were intrigued by them, since while they were doomed to die easily, they were also gifted with great potential and ability. Even the most common of their race could rise to great heights. It was that reason that drove his race to grant humans a rare honor: the Blood Ascension Ceremony. In time it proved to be a mixed result. Some used their powers to do great good in their worlds, while others did great evil with those powers as well. In time, the humans who were blessed with the powers of the ceremony began to squander their powers and even used them to attack the very beings who gave those powers, his race. At first, their attempts were futile, but his race grew tired and eventually left the lands, leaving humanity to carve out their own future. Valen knew that and decided that while his actions were considered treasonous by the more conservative members of his race, his actions could help rectify many things. Unlike the others, he still believed that humans were worthy of power, and he felt that now was the time to reawaken the old bonds that once bonded their race with his. Yet he knew better than to charge ahead. Time and experience had taught him much in the many millennia that had passed by since the last time his race ever spoke to humans had no doubt wiped the memory of his race from the worlds they were once part of, and the bloodlines they left behind had apparently lost a good portion of their original power, as without the presence of his race and those who underwent the ascension ceremony, portions of power in the blood were lost over time. And it seemed that this village of Konoha had a lot of that long degenerated power. For now, however, he had other ideas and plans, and those deserved his full and undivided attention. As the days turned to weeks, Valen knew that the time was right. His time in this world was coming to a close and his time with Naruto would end, but not before he made the last phase of his plan, and with that in mind, he spoke to Sarutobi a day before he would leave. Suffice to say, the conversation was very much different and the Hokage was not entirely agreeing with the plan, but he promised Sarutobi that he had made the plans and contingencies that were necessary for Naruto. The old Hokage couldn't help but worry and he couldn't blame Sarutobi for that. However, the plans were already in motion and he trusted him to see them through. Naruto was not happy. "You can't be leaving now of all things, it's going to be my birthday today." Valen smiled a bit and replied, "I will be leaving tomorrow yet Naruto, so for today I am here. By the way, I have something for you to try out." Naruto looked at Valen, handed him a big strange looking cup and it was filled with deep red liquid and it seemed to glow somewhat as well. Something about it seemed to make him feel a bit worried, but he pushed those feelings aside and looked at Valen, who smiled a bit. Valen was among the few to come to his private birthday, as well as Iruka, Tuki and Ayame. The two were among the few people apart from Iruka, the Hokage, and Valen that Naruto trusted, and they were very good to him. They were the people who made his favorite food and Iruka's own as well, and they were very decent and nice people as well. Naruto then spoke to his friend. "What is this? This better not be some weird drink for a joke." Valen laughed at that and replied, "No, I'm not the kind to joke anyone on important days like this, you know. But go ahead and try it, Naruto. It won't hurt you or whatnot, it might make you fall asleep faster though." Naruto looked at the drink and sighed and took it all in and found to be having a sharp but not a bad taste, sweet and cold, almost like a near-frozen fruit drink. As soon as that was over, the party started, and to his amazement, the Hokage himself came and greeted him a happy birthday, making Naruto all the more happy. And when the time came to finally wrap things up after the 4 hour celebration, Naruto went to sleep, and this allowed Sarutobi and Valen to talk with one another at the moment. "So it is done. I hope that you were right in this. The Kyuubi would no doubt try to defeat that power. I know that, but this demon will have a very hard time with the power. He might contain it, but he cannot kill it. It will be able to meld with Naruto soon enough. As for me, my time has come to leave. Tell Naruto that I will miss him." "I will." Valen then wasted no time and left Konoha, and he was not stopped by anyone in the village, since everyone else with the exception of the ninja on patrol were asleep. As soon as he was a fair distance from Konoha, a blue portal opened and Valen stepped through it and disappeared from Konoha and Naruto's world. In a massive chamber. "Your actions, Valen, are becoming very troubling as of late." Valen merely gave a smile and another voice came into the play. "Wipe that smile off your face, Valen. You know that you have violated our laws." Valen spoke firmly and with great authority. "Are you saying that my actions, which were independent, have no purpose? You all know that I am not ignorant of the laws. We do not question your wisdom, but we do question the why of your actions. You know that we were not to engage in the ceremony with humans ever since the exodus of our race to this dimension. We could walk and observe, but never interfere without good reason. But this use of the blood ascension ceremony is something that we cannot ignore for any reason. It was my decision to do so, and I have already weighed the possible outcomes personally." Have you truly? Do you realize that such power in the hands of humans will bring untold things to world you were in? Yes, and I will not take it back. If anything goes wrong, then I will deal with this myself. The beings questioning Valen were robed and hooded, but their eyes glowed with great power as they regarded Valen, and one of them spoke as well. "See that you do, Valen. You are one of the oldest of this conclave and the strongest and wisest, but your irrational actions at times have brought headaches and even disgust in the conclave. However, if you are willing to shoulder this responsibility, then so be it." As the hooded beings left, another figure appeared behind Valen, and Valen turned to face his new companion. The person appeared human but was covered in a very intricate set of tattoos that were gold on his slightly dark skin color and had a pair of wings in a bat-like form behind him, and his eyes were glowing slightly in a golden light. The human-like being had deep black hair with stakes of silver in it as the man wore pants with armor on it along with arm guards and boots. The new arrival then spoke to the disguised dragon who was still in his human form. "They're not happy with you again, master." Valen chuckled at that and replied, "I guess they would not be, given my rather unique choice of action recently. They have good reason in this case. You know as well I do that they have good merit. Many humans have abused the blood ascension ceremony and used the gifts bestowed upon them for their own selfish desires and their mad quests for power, knowledge and immortality. And we all know the outcome of those things, either we slay them or those who are of like powers kill them as well. True. But keep in mind, Fenrix, that there have been just as many humans who use the powers of the blood ascension ceremony for the right reasons and have been paragons of light, truth, justice, compassion and peace as well. And it is they who slay those who commit evil and destruction, and so do those born of such unions, as you well know." The winged and tattooed man, dragon nodded at that. "I do not question that, master. But there are few of them left in the worlds where we once resided in. There are too few humans like them in this day and age now." "True. But that is not an excuse to give up faith and hope for humans. I for one sensed a great destiny before this young child. He can be the savior of his world, or its destroyer. The day I met him and sensed his potential, and his life. I feel in my old bones that he will be the greatest one of his world, and I pray that he will take the path of being its savior and not its destroyer." You doubt me, Fenrix. "I do not, master. I simply wish to know more of this human that you bestowed the blood ascension ceremony to and your blood. He must be truly someone special for you to donate your sanctified and unlocked blood to. His name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, and the past few days I spent with him are enough for me to deem him utterly worthy of the blood ascension ceremony. He carries a burden with him that will shape him for the rest of his life, and I believe that my blood that now flows in his veins will be the key for him to truly be stronger than anyone." "I see. Tell me about him." Valen sat down and so did his half-dragon student, and the two discussed the life of Naruto, and as time passed Fenrix looked at his dragon master with some surprise. "You bestowed him your ceremonially consecrated blood even if such a being is inside him. That was a great risk you took, master. There is a chance that demon might have sealed the blood when you accomplished the ceremony and allowed Naruto to drink it. I had thought of that, however. That demon will have a hard time containing that power as it will filter through slowly. You know my lineage after all." "I do. I guess that since you have committed this action, then nothing can reverse it. But you know that it is law that should one undergo the blood ascension ceremony, then another must serve as his or her guide, or that person will not be able to truly utilize and control the powers that flow now in their veins. And this Naruto will be no different despite your lineage, he will need a guide master." Valen nodded and replied, "That he does, young Fenrix, and you shall be his guide. I charge you with his education and his training in the ways of the dragon ascendants." "Me? Yes. You are a dragon ascendant yourself after all. You know its power and the responsibilities entailed with it, and there is no one else more qualified in my mind than you, my young student." "I'm not exactly young anymore, master. Truly, at least by human standards, of course. Time moves much slower for you and I, and we are older than any living mortal. However, my decision has not changed. Will you do this for me? If that is your wish, I shall do as you ask. I just hope that this Naruto that you speak so highly of is truly worth your praise and the blood ascension ceremony that you performed. He is, more than even I can imagine. Take good care of him and teach him well. He can be a true hero with the proper guidance." With that discussion over, Valen watched as Fenrix made his way to the portal that led to Naruto's world. Back in Konoha, Naruto continued with his life in the village and hoped that his guardian would come back soon despite his word that they might not meet again. It was saddening to the young man that his foreign friend was no longer about, but he was happy to have met him and he smiled as he headed on back to the academy. unaware that he was now assigned a guardian and teacher for the rest of his life, as he was being watched. Fenrix watched Naruto from a very fair distance using his dragon vision. This allowed him to observe Naruto without being seen by others. He did this as he felt that it was time to observe just what was it about the boy that sparked his master's interest. Open your eyes, Naruto. Naruto opened his eyes and was surprised to see that Iruka's forehead protector was gone, and it was then that Iruka told him the words he had longed to hear ever since he had been in the academy. You've graduated, Naruto. You are a genin now. Iruka-sensei. So the boy knows his burden now, but was not driven to anger by it. And he has managed to fight the one who is like family to him. Good. Fenrix said as he observed Naruto and Iruka from afar. He had been concerned when the traitor Mizuki had made his moves on Naruto, but he was impressed as his future student had not given himself over to hatred and rage, and hearing that Iruka cared for him for real despite the past and considered him a good ninja of Konoha even if he makes mistakes and more, at least his heart was in the right place, and that made him a real man, not a beast. That impressed Fenrix and made Naruto cry as the Dragon Ascendant watched as Naruto fought Mizuki, and he had saved the man he considered family. It seemed that the boy would reach his dreams, and there was good promise in the boy after all. He also took the time to study Konoha and its people well, to know what was it about this simple warrior village that sparked the interest of his master, and it seemed that a considerable portion of the people here had good talent and ability, and he was interested in the bloodlines in this village, though compared to the dormant bloodline in his soon-to-be student, theirs would need a lot of work to come close to even a fraction of the power lying dormant in Naruto. However, Fenrix had his worries to think about as he looked at the happy scene between Naruto and Iruka, who he knew well enough. From now on, we're rivals. Naruto and Konohamaru looked at one another, and the two gave grins at one another, and they parted as good friends and rivals as they were getting ready for the soon-to-come time that they would fight one another for the title of Hokage. Fenrix looked on and noted the change in Konohamaru when the boy associated with his future charge. The boy had finally understood that defeating his grandfather would never earn him the title. He had to work hard and train hard to be a true successor to the title of Hokage, and if he had not associated with Naruto, then it would have never sunk into his mind. His charge was proving to be a very interesting person. Fenrix couldn't help but chuckle a little as he watched Naruto work with his new team. This Sasuke was supposed to possess the Sharingan, a bloodline trait that granted considerable abilities to its owner, though the Dragon Ascendant had not seen it in action yet. The boy was cool and aloof and took great pride in his training, and Naruto disliked him for it. Sakura was a smart girl and possessed a considerable level of chakra control and was the best in written scores and intelligent. Fenrix could see that while Sakura didn't seem to be special, she had other abilities that were different from the others. He observed Kakashi and admitted that while the Jonin was late considerably, loved reading perverted books, and more, the man had great promise as a ninja, and according to what he had researched about the Jonin sensei, he was a good teacher for them all at the moment. And he had to admit that this Jonin would be interesting to see in action. Fenrix nodded as he watched Naruto speak with Haku in the forest. He had been concerned when Haku attempted to harm Naruto, but he was curious why he stopped. He listened to the conversation between the two, and while he had a feeling that he should move in, he chose instead to watch once more, to see what will happen. Later, as Naruto and his team left Wave Country, Fenrix smiled all the more as he looked at how well the boy had grown, and he would prove to be a very interesting student to teach. However, the Dragon Ascendant had his worries. The Kyuubi would no doubt have restrained the power of his master's ceremonially consecrated blood early, as his master had told him, and despite the power of his master's blood, it had been held off by the Kyuubi. Until the demon's hold was removed, then there was no way for Naruto to gain the full powers bestowed upon him by his master Valen. For now, all he could do at this moment was wait and observe as the team headed back to Konoha. Damn it! Fenrix swore as he watched the battle between this grass genin who was more than what he seemed in the Forest of Death. He had observed Naruto and his team barely dodge the bullet in the first exam stage, and now here they were in the Forest of Death, which reminded the Dragon Ascendant of the Forest of Eternal Sorrow centuries before in his time. He observed them and watched as Naruto fought with this grass genin alongside Sasuke, but in the end it was a difficult battle. However, he spotted the grass genin striking the area where the seal that held the Kyuubi was located and the strike given by the being. Fenrix stopped just about as he was to enter the fray after so long in observing his young charge when he sensed something flowing in Naruto's body. He focused his eyes on Naruto's, seeing past his clothes, skin, flesh and body, into his very being, and saw something that he had hoped to see in a very long while. The sight of his master's blood flowing and mixing with Naruto's own blood, the glowing blood of a dragon king, mixing with that of a mortal body, granting power to the one it was given to, the birth of a dragon ascendant, an event never seen by others in nearly 3,000 years. So, it has begun, but the boy's mind has not adapted yet and neither has the body. This is not good. He watched as Sakura tried her best to protect both Sasuke and Naruto, and he could only wait and see what will happen and hope that something good will come out of this, despite his reservations in the matter. He observed as the sound genin were about to attack and then the arrival of the other Konoha teams that he had seen to help them. He gave a growl at the sight of Sasuke being controlled by the mark of that grass genin and watched as the man attacked without mercy and injured his attackers, and he watched as Sakura managed to stop him. But it was then that he sensed the upwell of power inside Naruto, but sensed that it was growing too fast. Fenrix quickly knew that the time to act was now. It was then that Dosu and everyone in the area was treated to the sound of a massive and primordial scream. The sound filled the forest and the sound was enough to make all of them freeze, and even Lee was shocked back to being away and then they turned. Aha hhhhh. Naruto was awake, but gripped in pain and rage as he thrashed about in a fury, as golden-colored mist flowed from his body. Sasuke, Sakura, Ino, Shikamaru, Choji, Neji, Lee, Tenten, and Dosu could only look in shock as Naruto roared in pain as he moved about and there was golden mist that was seeping out of his very skin. The blonde genin roared in a very inhuman way and was thrashing about as if he was being burned alive internally. Naruto, my god, what's happening to him? What's wrong with the Dobi? Did that ninja have something to do with this? What the heck is this? And why is it Naruto's chakra is expanding? Naruto suddenly tore off his upper clothes and exposed his upper body, and to the shock of everyone, there were glowing white symbols on his body, moving like living flame all over him, and then they began to glow golden as the mist seemed to fade back into Naruto's body, and to shock of just about everyone, Naruto was growing right in front of them. The glowing energy turned into an intricate series of tattoos that were unlike anything they had ever seen before. And there on Naruto's chest were 5 glowing points of light. One was deep red like blood, another was as white as a cloud in the sky, another was a deep blue as the sky and water, another was deep brown like the color of earth, and the last was deep yellow, like gold itself. The lights faded into spots that still seemed to glow as Naruto keeled over with his hands covering his face as his body was covered in gold tattoos with silver lining. His hair was longer now and seemed to shimmer for some reason. Naruto then moved his hands away and spread them out in a roar that made the very air vibrate with great intensity, and then he revealed his face, also covered in tattoos which did not remove the whisker marks he had, and his eyes were glowing deep blue. The blonde ninja suddenly growled once more as he charged right at Dosu and the other sound ninja, in a speed that dwarfed that of Sasuke when the flame-like tattoos came alive. What the? Dosu barely in enough time to leap back with Kin and Zaku with him when the tree behind him was blown to splinters by Naruto's punches. The blonde genin was roaring out in absolute battle rage, almost like a berserker. The leader of the sound genin could only look in shock at how easily the blonde had reduced the tree into kindling. My god, did Orochimaru brand the blonde with the cursed seal too? No, that is not the cursed seal, it's something else entirely. And that power, it's enormous, even Sasuke's chakra in the cursed seal form can't match that level. We have to escape now. Naruto leapt out at Dosu and lashed out with a powerful wave of pure destructive chakra that the ninja barely evaded as it reduced a nearby tree and a boulder into nothing. Naruto stopped and roared in anger as he looked about to seek his prey. The other ninja were shocked by this change in Naruto and tried to stay away. Sakura stepped forward and spoke carefully. Naruto, what's wrong with you? Ino, who had fully recovered from the technique she used on the sound Genin-kin, was shocked that Sakura was actually trying to talk to Naruto, who was somehow in a feral rage. She got up and shouted. Forehead girl, what are you doing? Get away from there. Naruto turned and his glowing gaze was aimed right at Sakura, who stopped as she was paralyzed with fear as something in Naruto's glowing gaze was primal and deadly. The blonde ninja opened his mouth and out came silver mist from his mouth and he clenched his fists and was about to move. Sakura barely had time to react when Naruto was now right in front of her in a heartbeat. She had barely moved an inch and despite being nearly 20 feet from her, Naruto closed the gap instantaneously. My god, he moved so fast I didn't even see it. However, Naruto didn't attack Sakura at first, merely gazed at her and then raised his right hand and his clawed fingers touched Sakura's cheek for a moment and he growled softly, making the others tense up even more. Somehow, Naruto was not attacking Sakura, but that could all change. It was then that a voice was heard. Naruto. Naruto and the others turned to see a robed and hooded man appear. The man was taller than any of them, almost the same height as Kakashi himself. The man removed his hood and robes and showed that he was wearing pants, armored boots, and forearm guards as well as a simple shirt. The man suddenly growled in a way that resembled Naruto, and to the shock of the ninjas present, the man's body was suddenly covered in the same gold and silver mist, and in a moment, he too had the same tattoos as Naruto did, though in a different pattern than the ones Naruto had. The new arrival had his own eyes glow the same way Naruto's did, but his gaze was deep green. Naruto roared out and charged, and the man did likewise, and both began to attack one another. Their punches connected and unleashed a powerful shockwave that knocked the ninja down to the ground with sheer force as the wind seemed to explode from the blows the two unleashed on each other. Sasuke shook his head and looked on with shock evident on his face. How can that Dobi's blow become that powerful? Sakura was greatly concerned as she looked to see the two facing each other off in combat. Questions were everywhere in her mind, but two were the most serious questions that were in her mind as she witnessed what was going on before her. What's going on? Who is that guy? The two traded punches and kicks at one another, and the sounds of the impact were enough to make everyone hearing it wince as it sounded very painful. But the two continued to throw attacks at one another at the moment. The ninja watched as Naruto's punch was evaded and a nearby boulder was shattered and reduced to powder in a heartbeat as the two warriors charged at one another. Naruto was totally focused on the new arrival, and this allowed them to all hide. Neji deactivated his Byakugan as he was nearly blinded by the massive bonfire of power that flooded Naruto's veins and chakra pathways. That power was incredible. He didn't have that kind of power when he was in the Chunin exam's first stage. What is going on here? The two traded blow after blow, and the area before them was now a ruined battleground, as if two titanic forces had clashed her and tore up the lands before them in a violent and brutal fashion. However, the new stranger fought with a precision and focus that showed that despite Naruto's power, he was not just equal to Naruto, but more than a match in power and also more skilled. However, the warrior had other ideas. This is not going to end well. I might have gained his full attention, but his power is still too wild. That demon must have heavily sealed the blood of my master greatly, allowing it to grow without adapting to his body properly. At this stage he will not be able to fully control it. I must restrain him and suppress his powers quickly before he ends up ripping this entire forest apart and attack anyone close to him, including his friends. The warrior dodged Naruto's next barrage of kick and quickly leaned backward as Naruto racked the air with his claws, and it was then that the stranger took out a pair of forearm guards and clamped them on Naruto's arms. Instantly the forearm guards glowed and latched on Naruto, and Naruto roared out in surprise and back away, and to the amazement of the others, they all saw the tattoos on Naruto glow once more and rapidly fade away and retract back into Naruto's body. Naruto thrashed about and still roared and growled until he suddenly stopped and turned, allowing them to see that his eyes were back to their normal form. And then Naruto collapsed, falling unconscious and snoring once more. Thank goodness I made it in time. Sakura directed her attention to the new arrival who fought with Naruto, and have the same tattoos as Naruto did. She knew that somehow, this person or whatever he was had been able to restrain Naruto and bring her teammate back to normal was not a threat. If he was, then none of them would be alive at this moment. Without hesitating, the pink-haired ninja stepped out from her hiding place and spoke. Hey, who are you? The person turned, and without effort his tattoos faded and his glowing eyes returned to normal, and he then spoke. My name is Fenrix. It's safe now. You all can come out. Your companion Naruto's been restrained by the bracers and is back to normal. All he needs to do now is rest a bit. The other ninja got out of their hiding places, just as Kiba, Akamaru, Shino, and Hinata arrived on the scene. As they gathered, they looked at the sleeping blonde ninja who a few minutes before was covered in tattoos, unleashing terrifying amounts of pure power, and was now able to devastate the landscape, and then they directed their attention to Fenrix, who kneeled down and checked Naruto's condition with a glowing hand. The blood is now melding with his properly, but the power is still too wild. He will have to keep the bracers on until he adapts properly to his newly awakened bloodline. Sasuke was shocked by this, and so was everyone in the group. Naruto, the class clown, the least skilled ninja of them all, the loudmouth, actually had a bloodline. Sasuke then spoke. Who are you? Fenrix merely observed Naruto and spoke. Like I said, Sasuke Uchiha, my name is Fenrix. How do you know my name? I know a great deal about you, Sasuke, and you as well, Sakura Haruno, along with everyone here at this moment and time. I know that the two of you who have the white eyes are both cousins with the names Hinata Hyuga and Neji Hyuga respectively, and you both are members of the Hyuga clan who have the special trait known as the Byakugan. I know that you, Sasuke, are the user of the Sharingan, and Sakura is the best in term of chakra control in the team that comprises you, her, and Naruto. I also know that the young man with the puppy on his head is Kiba Inuzuka, and the dog's name is Akamaru, and both are members of the Inuzuka family. Famous for their alliance with canine familiars, both of them are in the same team as young Hinata there, and with Shino Aburame, whose clan are known for their unique alliance with the destruction bugs that inhabit their bodies. I am also aware of Neji's team, comprising of Tenten, who is considered to be the best weapons expert in her team, as well as young Rock Lee, who's unable to perform ninjutsu and genjutsu but is a master of taijutsu. I also know that the one who loves to eat is Choji Akamaiki of the Akamaiki clan, who can manipulate their body size easily. The other is Shikamaru Nara, who possesses a very high IQ despite his laziness and is a user of shadow manipulation. And lastly, the blonde lady is Ino Yamanaka, whose family are known for being able to switch minds with their enemies. I know everything about you all. The revelation that he knew all of them and even their bloodline traits made the ninja even more curious as to who he was at this moment. Fenrix, however, pressed on and gave the ninja a very simple smile that denoted that he knew a lot more than he let on. I even know who your respective teachers are as well, and more besides. The ninja were very tense at this as Fenrix looked back at Naruto, and it was Sakura who spoke. Are you a spy or something? No. I know these things because I have been observing this village for some time, but without any malice or ill will. You were interesting subjects and people to boot. But my real target was Naruto here. After all, he is going to be my student in the near future. What do you mean? Fenrix stood up and replied. Naruto is the inheritor of an ancient power, older than anything you all can imagine. Within him flows the ceremonially consecrated blood of beings more powerful than any who walk the land. Naruto has in his body Dragon King blood, and that makes him a truly powerful dragon ascendant, just like me. What? It was then that Naruto began to wake up. And Fenrix smiled at this. There was much to do at the moment, things had to be explained, and more besides, but now that Naruto's body was beginning to adapt and grow stronger with the power flowing in his veins, then the real training will begin. Kiba couldn't help but shake his head a bit as he, Akamaru, Shino, and Hinata moved on to make it to the tower as they already had their own scrolls to enter the place. The young Inuzuka couldn't help but remember the words spoken by the stranger named Fenrix. I can't believe that Naruto has that kind of power. Who would have thought he'd have that? It is odd that Naruto never had that power back in the academy, but my destruction bugs panicked greatly when they sensed that power. I guess, but how the heck does he have a bloodline? He certainly never showed it back in the academy. Hinata was silent for the most part, but she couldn't help but wonder what the future was for her longtime crush. She hoped that he would be fine and would soon make it to the tower, as he had done so much to make it this far, and to not make it would really hurt him. Her thoughts then wandered to the stranger who was there with Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke at the moment, but for now, her team had to worry about getting to the tower. They were not the only ones, as Shikamaru, Ino, and Choji were moving along, as well as the team of Lee, Neji, and Tenten. As they made their way to the tower, they couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold for them as they were getting closer to being Chunin, while they thought of what will happen when they would meet with Naruto and the members of his team. Shikamaru had to admit that he had thought that Naruto's team would be easy to deal with even with Sasuke present. Now he was happy he didn't push through with that idea. Meanwhile, at a clearing, Naruto looked at the ruins that were once his favorite clothes and was not the least bit happy at the moment, and it was understandable as he didn't have any spare clothes to use at the moment and had been given a spare shirt by Fenrix. The young man in question was hauling a pair of massive tigers that appeared to be dead with their necks broken. And the three genin could only watch with some queasiness how the man methodically skinned the dead animals and began to cook the meat. Fenrix looked at the three and spoke. You three can relax for now. You have had a very busy day and you need to get your strength back as much as you can. Naruto couldn't help himself and spoke. Who are you exactly? Fenrix grinned at that and replied. I suggest you three get some food in your stomachs before we talk about the past. You'll need the energy for the mission of getting the scroll you need at the moment, and you still have one scroll to keep safe, so I doubt that fighting on an empty stomach is a good idea. The growling stomachs of all three genin convinced them that he was right, and they dug into the cooking meat, and while they were not big fans of eating tiger meat, the food was at least good to the taste buds and worth eating at the moment. Naruto and Fenrix, however, were eating like mad as they ate as much food as they could get, surprising both Sasuke and Sakura. The two were finally eating enough meat to feed at least 6 people, and the two could only look on in wonder. As soon as the two placed aside their plates, both gave explosive burps, and Sakura couldn't help but chuckle a bit at the sight. Fenrix laughed a bit and decided that now was the time to tell Naruto a portion of the information that he carried. Now you are wondering who I really, then I will tell you. You three already know my name, and what I am, at least at first. So therefore, I will explain as best I can. On what I am, I was once human, like the three of you, but I underwent a ceremony that granted me the power and ability of a dragon. It was known as the Blood Ascension Ceremony. This ceremony is ancient, older than anything that exists, and has not been practiced in nearly 9 millennia. Naruto scratched his head at that and asked, what's millennia? Millennia? A millennia is a number of years, namely 1,000, so this special ceremony has not been done in nearly that long, 5,000 years. The dragon race was the first and the only race to have this powerful ritual. This ritual was made by the dragons to pass their powers onto other beings, namely humans. Long ago, when humans were still starting in the building of their civilization, dragons took notice of them and were interested in humanity. They saw that while humans were a short-lived race, and could die easily, they had great potential and drive, and the dragon race decided to give their powers to humans. These humans became the dragon ascendants like myself. Sasuke listened as he couldn't help but wonder just what was going on, and how exactly did Naruto fit in all this. Sakura was the one who asked the question. How does Naruto fit in all this? In due time Sakura Haruno. The dragon ascendants rose in power and they used their powers in many ways. Some used their powers for the betterment of their people, while others did it for their own desires and for destruction. This made dragons realize that humans were capable of great good and great evil in equal measure. Over the years that passed, the humans who gained the powers of the blood ascension ceremony were able to forge vast civilizations and cultures, but as time passed, later generations of humans believed that they could become even more powerful than the dragon race by killing them and forcing them to give them the secrets of the blood ascension ceremony so they would be truly invincible. They attacked the dragons. Yes, their efforts were clumsy and foolish. Even the ascendants who were tempted with the idea of surpassing their former benefactors were easily defeated by the older and wiser dragons and their leaders, the dragon kings, as well as the ascendants who were against the whole idea. However, this signaled to the dragon race that they had to leave humanity to their fates and carve their own future without interference. Thus was the beginning of the dragon race from the world of men, as well as the other races in their charge who were willing to follow them. Even a large number of ascendants decided to leave the world with their dragon benefactors. Sasuke was getting a bit impatient. He wanted to know just how Naruto got a bloodline that he had never heard of before. Just how does Naruto fit in all this? We don't need the history lessons. Fenrix gave a dark glare at Sasuke that was enough to silence the Uchiha as the eyes of the dragon ascendant took their glowing green hue. This made Naruto and Sakura nervous as they had no idea how the situation will turn out. Fenrix then spoke seriously and showed his displeasure for Sasuke's actions. If you are so curious to know how your teammate fits in all this, then I hate to disappoint you, Sasuke Uchiha, but you will have to wait. All things will be explained in due time and not before. So hold your tongue and listen first. Your world's history is tied to this story as well, so do me, your teammates, and yourself a good favor and be silent. Sasuke would have normally ignored the warning, but something about the change in Fenrix's demeanor told the Uchiha that he was treading on dangerous ground, and so he nodded as he held his tongue. Fenrix relaxed and took a deep breath to relax his own thoughts and continued to speak. The dragon ascendants who were left behind thought that their already existing power was all they needed, but they were partially wrong in that assumption, since while they retained their powers, those powers were not able to be properly unlocked to their full potential after succeeding generations. Over time, the powers they once possessed eventually lost a great deal of its original power and potency, and without the teachings of the dragon race, as well as their knowledge, the powers were either heavily degraded or were eventually left to die and never return into the world of men. Not all the powers, however, faded and still existed and became bloodline inheritances, in the language of your world as Kekai Genkai, I believe. Sasuke was shocked to hear this, and Fenrix spoke to Sasuke directly. Now do you understand what I meant about your world's history being tied to what I was telling about the dragon race and the blood ascension ceremony? Are you saying that? Yes, this world, your world, thousands of years ago was part of the many worlds inhabited by dragons, and they too passed their powers to the humans who lived here. Your ancient ancestors were also dragon ascendants, and like before, attempted to wrestle the power away from the dragon race, forcing their benefactors to leave. And those ascendants began to lose the full potency of their powers, but their powers did not die out quickly like the others, and their bloodlines were not destroyed, despite being degraded. What this means is that your Sharingan, in fact, all the known and still to be seen Kekai Genkai of this world, are actually the degraded remains of the old dragon ascendant blood that existed thousands of years ago. Sasuke was stunned by this, and he couldn't help but feel angry at the thought that his clan's most respected Kekai Genkai was being seen as a degraded form of power. His people had become legends with the Sharingan, and he would not allow that fact to be downplayed by this stranger. You're calling the Sharingan of my clan to be nothing but a watered down and weak power. Fenrix was not intimidated by Sasuke's words and replied, I am not insulting it. I am merely stating what I know and what I have learned. You're lying. Why would I lie? What would I possibly gain by it? And do not think to attack me out of revenge or anger, Sasuke. I might not look like it, but what you have witnessed before is merely a tiny fraction of my true power. I am already 1,500 years old by human standards and years, and I am far more powerful and skilled than Naruto despite his status as a dragon ascendant like me. I have more power and ability than you could ever hope to accomplish in your lifetime, so if you decide to fight me, know that I can easily crush you like an annoying insect, so I suggest you calm down and keep in mind that I have no interest in you as an enemy for that matter. So don't waste either my time or yours, for both our sakes. Naruto was getting even more confused. Wait a minute here. When did I ever become a dragon ascendant? I don't recall ever taking part in this ceremony or even meeting a dragon, so how the heck can I be an ascendant? Sakura nodded at that as she wanted to know even more on this mystery. I have to agree with Naruto. If what you said was true, then there have been no dragons in our world for nearly 10,000 years. And if the blood ascension ceremony has not been done for that long, how could Naruto become an ascendant if there are no dragons in our world and they are the only ones who can make the ceremony work? Fenrix smiled. Finally, you are asking the right questions. Tell me something, Naruto. Have you ever met a man by the name of Valen in your younger years? Naruto thought back as the name was very familiar to him, and as he thought hard, it was not long before he recalled the foreigner who had become his friend for a number of months before he had left on his birthday all those years ago. Yeah, I remember someone with that name. He was so cool. I remember him scarring a number of villagers with that cool fire serpent jutsu that used no-hand seals. It was awesome. I asked him to teach it to me, but he said he couldn't. Do you know him? Fenrix nodded. Yes, I do. Valen was my master, and a dragon king, one of the 5 rulers of the dragon race. No one was more shocked than Naruto himself. No way. Valen was a dragon, but he didn't look the least like a dragon. He was human. Dragons have many powers, one of which was the ability to take a human appearance, unlike ascendants who were humans to begin with and thus can take a dragon-like appearance once their powers and bodies had fully matured and at their highest levels of power. He was able to begin the blood ascension ceremony and bestowed his consecrated blood to you on your birthday, when you last saw him. Do you remember the cup that he handed to you during your birthday? Naruto recalled that and he was shocked even more. I drank his blood. Yes. And it was already consecrated, thus you were able to receive its power in full form, and that makes you the very first dragon ascendant to walk this world. However, the reason your powers awakened late in your life was that due to certain circumstances, your dragon blood was sealed away in your body and it was only now that it awakened. Fenrix sighed and thought back on the other dragon ascendants who woke late to their powers for different reasons and what were the results of that. Naruto then looked at the bracers that were on his hands and Fenrix noted that and spoke. Those bracers are specially crafted and enchanted. When you awaken to your dragon blood, you were not yet mentally and spiritually strong enough to control your power and your Dragon King bloodline, which resulted in you becoming a berserker and you attacked others who you saw. If I had not stepped in, you might have turned on your friends. What? Why couldn't I remember this? Your human mind had not adapted well to the power and you regressed into a more bestial state, and do not think you are the first. There have been others who were late in awakening to their hidden powers and their bloodlines, and they had to wear these bracers which were placed on them by their mentors. These are not meant to be permanent, however. Once you have developed the mental and spiritual strength, the bracers will no longer restrain your powers, they will eventually unlock themselves and you can remove them, but until you develop the control and focus needed, then they remain with you. He then looked at Sasuke, who was still fuming mad, and replied towards Naruto and Sasuke. Also, since this is your first time using a bloodline such as this, Naruto, you will have to start from scratch. Unlike the Sharingan, which has been handed down from generation to generation among the Uchiha clan, your power is still in its infancy and is not yet fully grown. In dragon terms, you're still very much a hatchling and thus, your powers will need to be refined and perfected. So I have to learn how to use this power properly. Correct. That is why Master Valen sent me to be your guardian and teacher in the ways of the dragon ascendants. Another thing that I can tell you is that as a dragon ascendant, you can also undertake the blood ascension ceremony in order to pass a portion of your already existing power to another individual, to make him a dragon ascendant as well. That got Sasuke's attention right off the bat as he looked at both Naruto and Fenrix. However, this is something that is not to be taken lightly. You have to grow in power, knowledge, skill, and more before you can do so. If you attempt to do the blood ascension ceremony without the proper training, maturity in body, mind, spirit, and experience, plus without the fully mature powers, the results could be disastrous, for both you and that one you wish to pass your powers to. How disastrous would it be? Sasuke asked, and Fenrix simply replied. You both can either suffer intense pain both physically and mentally as well as crippling yourselves and being reduced into invalids, or if things go really wrong, then the both of you will die. The silence was deafening at that, and as soon as the reality set in, Fenrix then decided that now was the time to explain to Naruto some of the basic powers that he possessed at the moment due to his dragon blood. However, even with the bracers on, you are already unleashing signs of your powers, at least not totally visible ones. Hand me a kunai. Naruto and the others looked at one another and were very hesitant, but Sakura handed Fenrix one and he took the weapon and spoke to Naruto. Naruto, give me your arm. Naruto did so, and before he could blink, Fenrix grabbed his arms and stabbed him with the kunai. The ninjas panicked and quickly drew weapons while Naruto was released, and Fenrix laughed as he showed them the kunai, which was broken and several of its blade was actually shattered at the moment on the ground. The others were surprised by this, and Naruto looked at his arm, and saw that there was not a single drop of blood, not even a scratch. How? That, Naruto, is but the very first sign of your body adapting to the power that now flows in your veins. You might not see it, but there are tiny, and near invisible scales that are melding with your skin at the moment. That is dragon skin, and it is a basic power that all dragon ascendants are given as they adapt to their powers. As you can see, this power is able to make your skin similar to dragon skin, which is a lot tougher than normal skin, and can withstand blades and powerful forms of physical and magical attacks. Naruto was looking at his uninjured arm and was smiling a bit as the ramifications began to set into his mind at the moment. So I am invincible. Not exactly. While the dragon skin may make you stronger and tougher, you are not immortal or unstoppable. The ability makes you much harder to injure, but specially made blades with enchantments and the attacks of those who have very high levels of physical and spiritual strength can still injure you, but if anyone attempts to attack you with multiple blades and attacks, then you cannot be harmed. This power is different since as humans, ascendants do not lose their sense of touch like dragons do. Normal dragon scales grow on dragons every time, and when that happens, they slowly lose their sense of touch, so they sacrifice their sense of touch for the added defense. Ascendants will have that toughness, but not in the same degree as that of dragons themselves, and as such, don't lose their sense of touch. Do you get the idea? Naruto nodded at that, and he was even more curious about what other abilities he had under his command at the moment. What else do I have? You have the basic senses of a dragon, increased sight range, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. Physically, you have increased strength, though at the moment that is controlled by the bracers, as well as increased speed and stamina. You will develop also a dragon's immunity to illusions over time, as well as their resistance to various elements, toxins, and weakness. Will I even grow wings? Eventually you will, and they will be in the form of energy, but at the moment you have no wings at the moment. Those take time to grow properly and also to control. You certainly don't need those wings to suddenly sprout out in the middle of a busy street, you know. Anyway, here's one power you might find useful when the time comes. Do you see that tree over there? Naruto turned in the direction that Fenrix was pointing and nodded. Good. Now then, imagine your breath in your lungs becoming as hot and as intense as fire, and then unleash your breath at that tree. Naruto did so, and to his shock and that of the others, his breath did become flame as a massive tongue of fire was unleashed from his mouth at that exact moment of action. And the tree was easily incinerated in a matter of moments by the sudden unleashing of flame on it. All that was left of the once massive tree was a pile of pure ash. Naruto clasped his mouth in shock as he looked at the large tree that he had just reduced into nothing but ash in merely a moment. As soon as he was feeling a bit calmer, he turned to speak to Fenrix, who watched in approval, while Sasuke and Sakura were looking on with great surprise, and as soon as he was able to recover from the sight, he spoke to Fenrix. Did I just breath fire? Yes, you did. Fire breathing is very normal for dragons and it's child's play for ascendants. And unlike the fire-based jutsus done by ninja, what you did is a very basic and simplistic technique, and as you can see, it does not rely on hand seals. There are other breath techniques that you can use, but those will come in time. For now, however, I suggest we get moving. This cooking fire will no doubt attract all manner of predators and other ninja, and while we can handle them well enough, now is not the time, and you three need to find another team to get their scroll, am I correct? As they moved out, Kabuto made his appearance, and while the genin who had taken the exam 7 times was surprised to meet the dragon ascendant, he couldn't do much at the moment as Fenrix had no intention of leaving his charge alone for the time being. However, Fenrix did not trust Kabuto despite his pilot demeanor and manners, as he could tell due to his long years of experience. This seemingly kind person had a much darker personality and had an ulterior motive. He watched as Kabuto observed both Sasuke and Naruto, and that was the thing that made the Ascendant very wary at the moment. Naruto was eager to tell Kabuto about his new powers, but Fenrix gave him a very serious look, and despite being confused as to why his teacher in the art of the dragon ascendance was giving him that look, he knew that he should not reveal anything yet about his powers, and thus he kept his trap shut. They were able to track a genin team from the village of Hidden Waterfall and managed to get their scroll, and they were able to make it to the tower, and as soon as they got there, Naruto and others were able to get the scrolls open, and in walked through the scrolls, none other than Iruka, who despite being surprised by the presence of Fenrix who had joined the trio had told them that they passed in secret behind the 2 scrolls in the next parts of the Chunin exams. However, Fenrix had other ideas as he spoke to Iruka. I need to speak to the Hokage if at all possible. Why do you want to see the Hokage? And who are you? Tell him that Valen's old student is here to see him. Iruka remembered Valen very easily and could see that this man had the same level of manners as Naruto's old foreign friend had at the moment. However, like before, he couldn't help but feel that this guy had a hidden power, the same way Valen did, but if he was Valen's student, then he was all right in his book. It did not take long for the Hokage to arrive, and Fenrix bowed before him and spoke. Greetings, Hiruzen Sarutobi. You are exactly as my master Valen described. The Hokage nodded and looked at Naruto, and like before when he sensed a fraction of Valen's powers, he sensed the same at the moment in Naruto and knew that now was the time for the truth to come out. However, there was the fact that Valen's plans for Naruto had to be put into motion, and while Naruto had no idea what his foreign Dragon King friend had done for him, the Hokage had no doubt that things were going to be very interesting. With that in mind, he asked Iruka to guide Sasuke and Sakura to the main area where the other genin teams were at the moment. Naruto and Fenrix, however, were brought to another place in the tower, and sure enough, as soon as they entered the room, there were the council members of Konoha. As Sarutobi sat down, he knew that this day was by far going to be the longest he would ever be in at the moment. He wondered just what would happen if Orochimaru found out about Naruto's unique bloodline. He thought back on the day he discovered just who Valen was. Flashback. Sarutobi was surprised to see himself not in the Hokage Tower but in a massive field filled with grass and flowers. There were clear skies and clouds all over the place. It was a beautiful sight at the moment, and it was then that he saw Valen. But the human disappeared and then was replaced by a massive reptilian creature with wings and a long tail. His scales were deep platinum in color, and there were a number of large gems that were on his body and a crown-like protrusion of pure crystal on the head of the massive creature that moved back, and his wings were releasing some sort of wispy light that were of many colors like the rainbow. What in the name of the kami? Calm yourself, Hiruzen Sarutobi. I am in my real form, that of a dragon king. Valen, is that really you? That it is. You are in my mind, Hiruzen Sarutobi. And you are seeing me in my true form. I have never revealed this form to other humans in nearly 9,000 years. You are the first mortal in your world's history to see me in my full might. The human form I take not only allows me to blend among humans and other mortals, but submerges my full powers. The Hokage was stunned and wondered how to act. Long ago, when he was a child, he had been told ancient tales about dragons, and he was truly fascinated by the old legends, about how dragons would bestow great powers on humans and how these powers became legend. But he never truly believed them. But here he was now, in the mind of a dragon, and it was talking to him. Relax, young one. You might be old by human standards, but to me and my race, you are still very young. Now come, sit and I shall tell you of some truly amazing tales that I doubt even the greatest of your village had ever known, and what is my reason for being here. End of flashback. As he thought back on those things and Valen's desire to aid Naruto, he couldn't help but look at the young boy. He had been told that Valen had every intention to give Naruto a true power, older than anything that existed. The very origin of all the Kekkei Genkai of this world. The power of the dragon race. It was something he thought he would ever have the honor of seeing, but he worried about how the council would react to this news at the moment. However, Valen had planned ahead, and even the professor had to admit that it was pure genius, and beneficial to the village at the same time. Valen had also told him about his chosen teacher for Naruto in the ways of the dragon ascendants, and Fenrix proved to be everything his master told him about. As they sat back, a number of people gave curious looks to Fenrix and hostile ones to Naruto. The Hokage sighed at that, but he could tell that Fenrix was glaring back, and he couldn't help but be slightly amused at the sight of the council members being cowed a bit by the glare. The older, wiser, and more powerful and skilled dragon ascendant. Homura, his old teammate, was the very first to speak. We are here as you asked, Hokage-sama. What is this about? This discussion is twofold. Recently we have learned that Orochimaru had returned to the village and has already begun to make his move on our homeland. There is no doubt in my mind that he is planning something sinister on our village. The council were deep in discussion the very moment Orochimaru's name was brought up, and it was then that Anko arrived and gave her report on what was discovered when they found the real grass ninja who were all dead, and also what Orochimaru told her. The news that Sasuke Uchiha was the target of Orochimaru caused considerable concern from the council. They knew the power of the Sharingan, and if Orochimaru had interest in it, then they would have been ready for anything at the moment. As they planned out a strategy, it was then that one council member spoke to the rest. Hokage-sama, why is Naruto Uzumaki here in this chamber? The Hokage nodded and knew that now was the time to drop the news of Naruto's newly awakened bloodline to the Konoha Council. In fact, he couldn't help but admit mentally to himself that he was going to enjoy this. This has something to do with an incident no less than 5 years ago. The Hokage then told the council about the arrival of Valen to the village and what he had learned from the disguised Dragon King, namely on the blood ascension ceremony. The council were silent and none of them asked any questions. But many of them were directing their attention to Naruto and were studying him, trying to determine just how could this child who carried the Kyuubi could have such a bloodline. As soon as Sarutobi was done, he spoke to Fenrix as he had been told by Valen that since his student was the same as Naruto but older, more experienced, and wiser, he would know far more and he would truly give the council a lot to think about at the moment. And true enough, when Fenrix told the council what he had told Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura about the blood ascension ceremony and the history of their own world thousands of years ago, there was an uproar. The council members were looking at Naruto incredulously and were talking back and forth. This knowledge shocked the very council to their knees, and it had taken a few minutes for the knowledge to sink in and take hold of the people. To think that this kid had a Kekkei Genkai that was the progenitor of all the known Kekkei Genkai, was in one word, astonishing. Sarutobi took this all in stride and then removed a special document that he had made and waited to put into action for nearly 5 long years. This was going to elevate Naruto to a whole new level, befitting the powers he had now been awakened to. I have been planning to deal with this for some time, and therefore, considering that Naruto is the sole owner of this Kekai Genkai and is a citizen of the village of Konoha, it is by law that as a user of a Kekai Genkai, Naruto is to become the head of his own clan, that will take his last name. As of today, Naruto Uzumaki is now head of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto was stunned by this as well as overjoyed. In just one day, he had gone from a simple genin with a dark secret to the head of his own clan and wielding a Kekai Genkai that was now recognized as the progenitor of all the Kekai Genkai in existence. Homura and Kaharu were very much in shock as well as just about everyone in the council, and it took a few minutes for Homura to speak. We need proof to see if this is all true. Fenrix nodded and replied, fair enough. As the council was ended with Naruto swearing not to reveal anything to his team and also to prepare for the soon-to-come announcement of his being head of his own clan. Fenrix and Naruto went back to the other genin, with the Hokage planning to speak to Kakashi in secret soon about all that was happening in the shadows. Fenrix then spoke to him in secret. Naruto, I will allow you to use your powers in this fight. Once you start the fight you will be part of. Summon your Dragon King blood, and when you feel its powers come, say the words, Dragon King blood, release, and think of an elemental form. How will that work? You'll see. As Naruto arrived, the others were surprised that he finally arrived, and the Hokage then told them the true purpose of the exams and what was about to happen. Sasuke himself was eager to get things going. But apart from wanting to fight both Gaara and even Neji Hyuga, he had developed the desire to fight Naruto himself. He was not going to let this new Kekai Genkai beat the Uchiha clan's Sharingan, despite the fact that Naruto's Kekai Genkai was supposed to the pure version and much more powerful than the Sharingan and the ancestor of the Sharingan. He would not let the Sharingan, the pride and honor of the Uchiha, be overshadowed by anything, even this Dragon King bloodline. The thought of using the Sharingan to beat Naruto had made the seal react, and he held his shoulder in pain once more. Sakura saw that and couldn't help but feel even more concerned by what was happening. She had seen and heard Orochimaru's dire warning and plans to take Sasuke, and she couldn't help but feel even more afraid of what might happen if Orochimaru. She was not the only one, however, in that train of thought. Sarutobi, Ibiki, Kakashi and Anko watched the situation, and they each had their own thoughts on the matter. The elderly Hokage wondered if he was making the wrong move, but focused himself on the here and now, since if he tried to do something that could alert his former student of their plans, then things would be in even greater danger. For now, they had to play along that they were just becoming aware of the situation and keep Orochimaru in the dark about their covert plans. He didn't know where Orochimaru was right now, but there was no doubt that he would very well be watching, and he might be in the very same room as they all were. Naruto told them that Orochimaru had sent the Sound Genin as an assassination team for Sasuke, so that would mean that he could be in league with Sound or had manipulated them to fight for him. He didn't have enough data to make a move, and it was a very risky game he was playing, but it was the only option they had right now. Anko hoped that the others would see reason and have Sasuke placed in isolation so they could keep the cursed seal under wraps, but she reined in her thoughts and tried to think it over. The council made it clear that even if they were successful in keeping him sealed up, Orochimaru would no doubt act quickly and would kill as many people as he wants to force them to show how he would react to them trying to deny him his gift. She had a feeling that there would be more involved with Orochimaru's return to Konoha. She knew enough about her former sensei that he always had other plans buried in his current ones. Ibiki hated to admit it, but he knew how dangerous Orochimaru was. Even when he was the leader of the Anbu interrogation squad, he was afraid of Orochimaru. Even when he was still a child, the snake-summoning boy with snake-like eyes and pale white skin seemed more monster than human to the battle-hardened special Jonin, and the horrible things that Orochimaru did for the sake of power and knowledge further reinforced his inner fear of Orochimaru. He knew that Orochimaru would not hesitate in any way to get what he wanted, and would any method. Not only was he known as a highly skilled ninja, but also as a master manipulator. He had no doubts in his mind that Orochimaru would have plans to help him as well. Kakashi was told about the cursed seal and heard Anko's words and how he defended the Sasuke and how Anko reacted. He actually understood Anko's anger and how she would look at Sasuke with worry and mistrust. He knew Anko had once been Orochimaru's student years ago when she was young, no doubt around Naruto's own age or younger. She had grown to hate and despise Orochimaru for his evil ways, and while she did have something of a dark streak in her nature, she was not evil in the full sense, and she had learned a number of useful jutsu. Like all others who knew her, he knew about cursed seal that she herself had, and while he told them the truth about Sasuke, he kept in mind that out the other children subjected by Orochimaru to the cursed seal before Sasuke was given that cursed seal, Anko was known to be only among the very few survivors of the cursed seal, as many like her died in great pain from the cursed seal, so she would know how deadly it was. He wondered if he should be ready to make his move, but for now he knew that he had to keep the binding technique ready should the cursed seal become too much. Sakura was about to raise her hand when Sasuke stopped her with a glare and spoke in a tone that demanded answers. "What are you doing, Sakura?" "Sasuke, you have to forfeit the matches for now." "Why the heck should I? Do you think I'm blind to how you're suffering from the effects of the cursed seal? You can barely use either your chakra or your Sharingan without that thing coming to life and injuring you even further. You can't hope to survive any fight with that thing eating you from the inside. Please, I am begging you as a friend and teammate, to please forfeit not for our sake, but your own." Sasuke, however, didn't listen as he thought back on his oath be stronger, to gain more power and more ability to finally accomplish his long dream of avenging his clan and killing the one responsible for the murder of all of his family by one of their own, his own. He then thought about his dream, and what and who he was. He was no longer just a man, but an avenger, a being who sought power and would seek out that power, regardless of its source, be it kind or evil. He wanted to show that he was strong and he wielded power, power to defeat all who faced him, and the only way to gain it was to fight the strongest, and all of them were here. In this very tower, he could not afford to back down from this. Lee, Dosu, Gaara, Neji, and Naruto were here in this room. If he backed down now, he would never get another chance like this, and he was not going to be denied this chance. He would prove the power of the Sharingan for all to see, especially Fenrix and his student Naruto. The three genin, however, turned when someone spoke out. "Okay. You got me, I'm out of this part." Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke turned to see Kabuto raising his hand, and that made Sasuke very wary of the leaf genin who was now leaving the scene. Holy Talon thought likewise and wondered just what was Kabuto up to. From what it could sense, the genin had more than enough chakra and physical strength to be in this match. Why was he backing out? Naruto was also curious and spoke. "Hey Kabuto-san, why are you leaving?" Kabuto turned and smiled a bit and replied. "I'm sorry Naruto, but I had a heck of a hard time getting the scroll from the other team I fought with, and they really drained me, and even if we made it here now, I'm still somewhat beat up, but I know you can do well. I know I'll miss it, but, hey, don't worry about me, do your best, alright?" Naruto looked sad but smiled and gave Kabuto a thumbs-up signal. "I will." Kabuto smiled back and gave the same reply as he left the area. However, he didn't get away scot-free. Sarutobi looked at the leaving form of Kabuto and recalled something. This was not the very first time he had seen this young man, and neither was this the first time he had seen the man leave the Chunin exams at this stage. At first, he had allowed it as there was truth to his claims, but now that this was the 7th time he had done this act, he was got suspicious. He turned to Anko and Ibiki as well, and they were able to find out just who he was, namely his name of Kabuto Yakushi and his times in the academy and in the missions he had undertaken, and the times he had taken the Chunin exams. His grades were average and he was not really much of a special case. However, Anko revealed that he was the child who was found among the enemy dead during a battle in Konoha's history years before, the Battle of Kiku Pass, by one of the Konoha medic squads, and was taken in. And that boy grew up here, learning medical jutsus, and had a very unremarkable career. That boy was Kabuto himself. As soon as Sarutobi got the details, he looked at Kabuto and thought to himself aloud. What sort of game is that young man playing with us? He wasn't the only one as Kabuto was stopped by Yoroi, his fellow teammate, and spy of Orochimaru. The two exchanged a hushed conversation with Yoroi warning Kabuto about his playing games and keeping his loyalty to Orochimaru, to which Kabuto replied back that he doesn't have to worry, and to which Yoroi replied that while he was Orochimaru's favorite, he was certainly going beyond his bounds. Kabuto replied that he knew about Yoroi's desire to take his place and now was his chance. With that, Kabuto bid farewell to both Naruto and Sasuke. Sorry I couldn't stay and fight, but if I did, the old me would have come back. I will be watching though. I hope you do well, Sasuke-kun, and you too, Naruto-kun. Besides, if I fought here and now, I would be revealed as a spy, and I wouldn't want that. The rest I leave to you and your capable hands, Orochimaru-sama. The sound Jonin looked on, but a thin smile appeared as Kabuto left the room, leaving the others to wonder on what they would do. However, Sasuke made up his mind already. As Sakura tried to raise her hand once more, he stopped her and replied, Sakura, this is my path. I chose it for myself. You have no right to tell me what I should do. I am your teammate and friend Sasuke-kun, and I can't just stand by and let that thing eat you alive. If you are truly my friend and teammate Sakura, then let me fight. This Chunin exam is more than an exam for me. I don't care much about the title of Chunin. I am an Avenger, nothing more. I have something to do no matter what, and I can't have myself stopped by anyone, not even you. All the strongest ninja are here and now. If I don't fight them here and now, then how can I see how strong I have become? I have to become strong no matter what. I won't let anything stop me, and that is what I want, and you have no right to stop me. Sakura looked on, sadly unable to say anything as she tried her best to reason with her teammate. Naruto, however, was far from happy with Sasuke's behavior towards Sakura, and he was not going to let Sasuke's attitude get the better of him. Sasuke-tem, you have to listen for once. Stop acting so cool and focus on the truth, that damned seals. Sasuke then turned and gave a challenging look to Naruto. Naruto, you ought to know that you're one of the people I want to fight. That made Naruto glare back and wonder just what was going on in the mind of Sasuke, but they had no time to think about that as Hayate got the Chunin exams underway. He then showed them the screen nearby that would take the names of the genin present and pair them in one-on-one combat. Also, since there were 23 of them, then it would be a series of 11 matches to start the preliminaries. It didn't take long for the first match to begin, and much to Naruto and Sakura's dismay. It was Sasuke Uchiha against Yoroi Akato. Sakura was stunned. While Sasuke smiled, Naruto gave a shake of his head, while Lee, Dosu, Neji, and Gaara decided to take a good long look at Sasuke and see just how he gets out of this one. As soon as that was announced, the genin and their Jonin sensei made their way to the upper terraces to watch the match and to stay away from the fight itself. I won't have this fight any other way. Gecko then spoke. All right, the names called forward, please come forward. The Chunin proctor then faced the men and asked them if they had any objections to the match-up between them, and they replied that they had none, while Orochimaru in his sound Jonin disguise smiled and watched on to see how this situation will play itself out. Sasuke then spoke to Yoroi. You are going to be in for the fight of your life with me. Hey, bring it on, Sasuke Uchiha. Yoroi said with a smile, which was naturally hidden by his veil as he looked at Sasuke, who looked back with a smirk. Naruto and Sakura looked on and wondered how things would turn out, while the others were looking with interest. Sasuke kept his cool, but held his shoulder in pain as the cursed seal once more reacted with his chakra. Hayate saw this and then gave the announcement that those who were not called were to leave and head for the upper levels for the match grounds to be clear of bystanders. As they got ready, Kakashi came by and was greeted with great enthusiasm by Naruto, and the Jonin spoke directly to Sasuke. You have to be careful not to use your Sharingan, Sasuke. If that mark activates, then your life will be on a thin edge. So you know about the seal? Yes, and what it does to those who are infected with it, and just so you know, if this fight gets beyond your ability to handle, then I will stop the fight personally. Sasuke turned and was outraged by Kakashi's words to him, and it made him even more unhappy to know that there was some truth to Kakashi's words. If he used the Sharingan, he would be vulnerable when the cursed seal activated itself and allow his foe to beat him senseless. But he knew that it responded to his chakra quite often. If I use my chakra, it grows stronger in its grip, and Orochimaru's grip on me grows stronger. I have to beat Yoroi without my Sharingan, and my clan's jutsus are off limits as well. Maybe I can make him laugh to death instead. Orochimaru, however, was going to enjoy this fight. You are going in for a good test, Sasuke-kun. Yoroi's unique talents should be a real challenge. I want to see if you can overcome it. Sasuke sighed mentally and psyched himself up and got ready nevertheless. The other teams got ready to watch as Kakashi hoped that Sasuke didn't overdo it and get himself in a real mess. As soon as Gekko gave the signal, both ninja went to work, as Yoroi threw some shuriken and Sasuke fired some kunai, but Sasuke was stunned to the ground when the cursed seal awakened, nearly leaving him open to attack. As Yoroi closed the gap, Sasuke quickly used his remaining strength to move out of the way of Yoroi's fist. He then used the kunai he had to get a grip on the floor and used his legs to kick Yoroi down to the ground, and then with several restraining moves managed to knock Yoroi to the ground and opted to try and make Yoroi fall to submission. He got him. Naruto cheered, but Yoroi merely grinned and replied, "Really now? Who's got who, I wonder?" His hand glowed once more as he activated his own chakra and then grabbed Sasuke, and much to Sasuke's shock and disbelief, his chakra was being taken from his body. What the hell is happening? Yoroi then stuck hard, loosening Sasuke's grip, and then forced his way through, and much to the shock of everyone in the room, except Orochimaru, who smiled sadistically as the spy from the Sound Village leapt back in as Sasuke managed to get off the floor. The ninja then used his glowing hand once more and began to drain Sasuke's chakra, making Sasuke lose his power. Kakashi and the others looked on in surprise and disbelief as the Uchiha survivor was being placed in a deadly situation. My chakra? What the hell are you doing to my chakra? What? You're just noticing it now? Yoroi replied as he laughed and continued his actions on the still weakened and disoriented Sasuke, who couldn't muster enough strength to break free just yet. Orochimaru noted and wondered how Sasuke would be able to handle this mess. Yoroi was indeed given such a unique talent. He could absorb the chakra of his foes with only a touch of his hand, quite a unique and deadly talent in the right hands and in the right circumstances, and this would make things even more difficult for Sasuke. As soon as Yoroi takes your precious chakra, Sasuke-kun, you will have no other choice but to rely on my little gift to you, and we shall see how you do. Release that forbidden power. It will save you after all. You have no choice in this matter. Sasuke managed to gather enough strength to kick Yoroi away from him, but he knew now that close combat with this guy was a serious mistake. If he got grabbed like that again, he was finished, but he was too weakened by the first two attacks that using either kunai or shuriken were a bad idea, and even if he could do it, the cursed seal would hurt even more. Yoroi, however, was not going to stop as he lashed out at Sasuke, and the Uchiha ninja tried to evade and managed to avoid some of the blows, but he got hit by the hand in the hair. However, instead of being a miss, the chakra absorbing technique affected him quickly, forcing him to lose even more of his strength, but he had enough to tolerate Yoroi's taunts and get some distance. Sasuke-kun. Damn it. What the heck is wrong with you? Think of something fast or your history, Sasuke. Sasuke admitted that Naruto had a point, and then he realized that he had one chance. Part of it wasn't original, but heck, as things were at this moment, it was better than nothing. He waited and then made his move. Managing to avoid Yoroi's next strike, he then attacked with a move that everyone recognized, including a duo of ninjas with the same hairstyle, the same suits, and the same bushy brows. Wait. That's my move, Lee said as he saw Sasuke use the same kick that he had used on him before during that test fight. He couldn't believe that Sasuke was using that move as well. What the? Guy thought as Sasuke leapt after Yoroi. As soon as they were in mid-air and Sasuke was behind Yoroi, he confessed something to the hidden sound spy. Alright, I'll admit I borrowed this move, but from this point on, the rest is my own creation. With that, Yoroi only commented the first part of the move as Sasuke began to take his shot at taking out Yoroi, but before he could accomplish it, the cursed seal once more activated and he was bathed in pain as the flame patterns once more began to spread all over his body as he now felt its presence begin to fill his body and mind. Damn it all, not now. Sasuke-kun. Crap. Sasuke, you had better not lose here and now of all things. You said you and I will be fighting soon when the preliminaries are over. Don't you dare go back on your word to me now. Sasuke looked at Sakura with her eyes in tears and her face in worry and fear, while Naruto was seriously tense and not wanting him to just give up and lose now. He was not going to be beaten here, he had much to live up to and his two goals in life would be even further out of his reach if he lost here and now. Damn. I won't lose, I will win and I will do it on my own power. With that, he focused his will and strength of mind into it and managed to beat back the seal and force it to subside, much to the shock of the people who knew about it, namely Kakashi, Anko, Sarutobi and naturally Orochimaru himself as Sasuke used several attacks to take Yoroi out of the match and finished the attack with a powerful heel kick known as the Lion's Barrage. The two ninja were out of it, but Sasuke was able to get off his back and was sitting down with exhaustion and Hayate declared Sasuke the winner and that was Kakashi's cue to make his move after trading some words with Guy. As Yoroi was taken away by the medics for treatment and one of the medics tried to approach Sasuke, but Kakashi interceded. The Jonin told Sasuke that the cursed seal had to be contained and now was as good a time as any for it to be done. Sasuke naturally was not happy with the fact that he was going to be missing out on the rest of the competition, but Kakashi was not backing down and Sasuke had no choice as he was followed by Kakashi. Orochimaru smiled and was excited at what he had seen while Anko and the others who were aware of the effects of the cursed seal were impressed that Sasuke was able to resist the call of the cursed seal to use its power. Orochimaru however decided to leave the scene and see just what Kakashi was having in mind. However Dosu did not like this, he had a feeling that there was to what was going on and he wondered what was going to happen next. However he decided to see just what would be the outcome of the other matches, he had nothing left to take care of at the moment and attacking Orochimaru was suicidal to say the least. Back in the ring, Naruto sighed and got ready to the soon-to-come fight that he is going to be handed to by the council and as a way to test his Kekkei Genkai. He was looking forward to this fight and hoped that what Fenrix said to him would work out. It was then that Gecko spoke. Due to the large number of Genin teams, a Genin team must be removed as per request by the council. The next fight will place the Genin team from the village of Hidden Rain against. The people watched as the electronic board moved through the names and to the shock of everyone, except Naruto and Fenrix. Naruto's name came up. The other Genin were surprised as one Genin taking on a three-man team was unheard of anywhere, and even more so that it was Naruto who was going to be the one lone Genin who was going to be fighting against them. The rookie 9 knew that Naruto's new power might work, but how will he beat at least 3 targets? The Rain Genin had the thought that they were going to win easily and their leader spoke to prove their thoughts. I don't know why a punk like you gets to fight all 3 of us, but we are going to make sure we are not going to be eliminated by you, if you could eliminate us by your lonesome kid. Naruto however was not the least bit intimidated as he replied with a confident smirk. Why don't you stop talking and start fighting? The Rain Genin got real angry at that and their leader Oboro cast the Kage Bushin Jutsu that they favored and when they had surrounded Naruto they unleashed another surprise. Take this brat. The Rain Genin unleashed a massive number of shuriken and kunai at Naruto to finish him off. Naruto however merely relaxed and closed his eyes, much to the shock of everyone in the area, while Kin, Dosu, and Zaku looked on. Kin looked at Naruto and spoke. Is that guy trying to commit suicide? Who the hell cares? He's nothing but trash. Dosu however was not so sure about that. After what he had seen the boy turn into before when Kin and Zaku were out cold, he leader of the Sound Genin team knew that there was lot more that what was going on before him. And his thoughts were proven true as the kunai and shuriken hit Naruto, without ill effect, The weapons merely hit him on the skin and bounced off, without a single drop of blood on his body. What the hell? Naruto grinned, and now it was time to pay these guys back for that attack. He focused his thoughts on his blood and then felt a rush hit his body, and now he felt himself being energized, and the others watched as Naruto once more was releasing the same gold and silver mist, and he spoke to the Rain Genin team. Now that you've had your fun, it's my turn. Naruto tensed up and shouted. Dragon King blood, release. Whined. Elsewhere. I must have been out of my mind to have said that. Kakashi said to himself as he calmed himself a bit and looked over at Sasuke, who was currently resting after the binding seal ritual that he had undergone. He was acting this way since he had been faced by Orochimaru, who was shed his disguise and revealed himself still in his sound Jonin outfit, and the two traded words, while Kakashi defended Sasuke with his use of his Reikiri. During this time, Orochimaru revealed that he had known about the Wave Country mission, but only because he wanted to keep track of his prize, Sasuke. He also revealed that he was the head and leader of the Sound Village and that sooner or later, Sasuke will be his, and then nothing would stop him. However, he was interested with Naruto now, either as a test subject or as a target to be eliminated, and to have that sword either corrupted or destroyed. Orochimaru left afterwards, and Kakashi was able to get some help from a small band of Anbu that he sent to escort and protect Sasuke in the hospital, where he was to rest and recover until his body got used to the binding seal. Before Sasuke fell unconscious, he had told him that the binding seal needed his will to keep the cursed seal from spreading. In the ring, the Rain Genin couldn't help but feel themselves come close to crapping in their suits as they witnessed something that no one had ever expected. They had expected a 3-on-1 fight to be easy for them, while everyone else were shocked with the situation as Naruto faced a senior Genin team all on his own. However, it seemed that there was no need to worry. Sarutobi couldn't help but smile a bit, and he looked at Fenrix, who smiled at him as the two of them looked on. The Hokage turned to see the shocked expression of the other members of the Konoha Council. It had shocked them to see that Fenrix was not kidding about Naruto's newly awakened bloodline being powerful despite it being still in the infancy stage. Naruto looked at his arms and saw the tattoos that took the color of pure silver, and the tattoos were also different in form and pattern. There were waves and lines as well as cloud-like symbols and whirling spirals, and even though he knew that this was just a basic power at the moment, he was amazed by the power that was flowing out of his body at the moment. All he said was the release command, and then the element wind, and then the tattoos appeared and transformed, even though he still felt the rush of pain at first, but that was now nothing more than a simple prick than a blinding flash of power. And here he was now, surrounded by a column of pure wind that was moving about him at his very command. There were 2 visible vortexes of air on his hands, while a glowing aura of air surrounded the area near his feet, showing swirling light and air around him like a tornado, and his eyes were glowing slightly as his tattoos were glowing, and he could feel the power of his bloodline flowing through his veins, and he felt a desire to unleash his powers at the full. All over the area and the building were strong winds as the air came alive and moved all over the place, and the wind was flowing in and moving all over Naruto in that moment. Naruto then decided to bring it on as he moved and leapt over the heads of the Rain Genin, and as soon as he landed, he spun himself and moved his arms towards his chest in the same way and created a massive sphere of pure high concentrated air around him. He then pushed his arms outward at the sides, and the air concentrated there in the sphere that covered him suddenly exploded with amazing force outward. The 3-man team of Rain Genin were sent flying outward, and so were their Bushin, and those were reduced to splatter as the power of the wind-based attack. And the Rain Genin were knocked out in merely 3 seconds, a new record in the whole history of the Chunin exams. Just about every ninja within the whole room was stunned at the sight before them all. Naruto, with just one move, had defeated 3 Genin in one simple but powerful move and in merely the time frame of 3 seconds. Holy, what was that? Kiba was shocked out of his hood as he saw that all the Rain Genin were knocked out by one move. If he thought that the sight of Naruto not even taking a single scratch from the kunai and shuriken that were thrown at him was shocking, this one just beat them all. Akamaru was also confused and barking. That was amazing, Naruto-kun. Hinata was blushing bright red at how much Naruto had not just grown physically, but in power as well. That was amazing, as well as the sight of Naruto being unharmed by the kunai and shuriken that were thrown at him earlier. She had thought he was going to be badly injured, but the shuriken and kunai didn't even hurt him. Is that the power of Naruto's Kekai Genkai? If that is, it is amazing. Rock Lee was impressed and proved it as he shouted. That was great, Naruto-san. Quote. Guy was also impressed at the sight. He was not familiar with the move that Naruto had used and wondered if Kakashi had been teaching him some new technique. However, the rival of Kakashi had his doubts. That move was certainly something that Kakashi might learn during his years as an Anbu, but as a taijutsu master of Konoha, he saw that the technique required no hand seals at all. He knew that there was no way a jutsu like that would be done without hand seals, so it must be something. For now, since Kakashi had left with Sasuke to do something, he would have to keep this secret for the time being and figure out what was going on. Ino was surprised at the whole scene. Is that really Naruto? The same Naruto who used to be the dead last among us? This is troublesome. If he can fight like that at the moment, there's no way I can beat him if I have to fight him. Shikamaru said as he looked on. Shoji was silent as he munched on, but even he was impressed by what he had seen. Their Jonin-sensei were also surprised by the sight. Asuma was stunned to silence as he nearly dropped his currently lit cigarette to the ground at the sight before him. As soon as he was able to get his mouth to work at the moment, he decided to speak. That was unexpected. That was no normal wind release technique. Kurenai was also impressed by the sight. Amazing. To think he could manipulate wind to that degree and not use hand seals doing it. Could this really be the same Naruto who was the undeniable class clown that failed several times in the academy graduation exam? Gaara was very impressed at the sight and trembled as he looked at the raw power Naruto had just displayed before them. He is strong, very strong. I want to kill him. Temari was also surprised. Impossible. That guy did all that. Wow. Kankuro was surprised at the sight. Baki was likewise impressed as he had never seen that before. There were a large number of wind users back in Suna, Temari being one of them, but there was no one who could manipulate that much wind with only their hands and body. This one deserved to be watched. The Sand Jonin decided to do some investigating, even though he had faith in the plan. This Naruto Uzumaki might prove to be a problem. Baki, however, had no idea how much Naruto would be a problem as the blonde genin and now clan head moved triumphantly back to the upper floor to see the next fight.